got to be open-minded. I think you got to be willing to be doing it wrong and fix it. You can't be willing to do it wrong, find out you're doing it wrong, and then continue doing it wrong.
Yeah.
You are now tuning in to the Roughnecks Podcast with your host, Cole Nixon. Much love.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Roughnecks Podcast. The only announcement I have today is there is a post on Instagram, and we want to hear from you guys, whether that or about guests. So this could be anybody and everybody that you think would be a good guest on the show. It could be for a Q&A, it could be for a guest episode, or even a guest on Reno's Rants. Whatever it is, tag them in the Instagram post, and we will reach out to them. But we are coming to you from a different studio, not the Roughnecks studio. Not even a studio for sure yet. Not officially, but somebody that I've been working on for like 3 years now, and I'm around them every day pretty much. Steve Kidwell, welcome to the Roughnecks Podcast.
All right, what's happening?
Yeah, I've been trying to get you on for, this is what, your third podcast? Because you did Caleb's.
Caleb's synced up.
I think that's all you've done.
Is that it?
I think. I don't know.
Was there? Yeah, I would say there. It's just this third one. Yeah. Which I didn't want to do any of them all along.
Yeah, that's true. You didn't even really know you were signing up for the first one, did you?
No. No, it wasn't supposed to be the first one. Kind of signed up for the second one. And now we're here.
Yeah. So, third podcast, so you got a little bit of it. But just to kind of kick off the episode, I like to allow the guests to give a background on who they are. So just kind of tell us, what you do and, just essentially who you are.
All right. Well, I own a company that installs in-ground pools, hardscapes, whole backyards. Been in business for, 12 years? Doing odds and ends stuff. Really been focusing on what we're doing now for 5 or 6 years. It's been a crazy road. Always been a Licking County, Central Ohio guy, so haven't really ventured off much when it comes to that. But, I don't want to get into it too much because I feel like a lot of your questions are probably going to go that direction.
Yeah, I usually also do the background for people that I don't know as well. You gather some information, but with you, I'm around you and been around you for a long time, so it's a little bit different. But yeah. I guess let's just start at the beginning. How did the business start and what? Because it wasn't just you didn't do pools and patios to start. How did it start, and why did you decide to kind of start your own business?
So I think for me, it was I've always just been a kind of a busier person, and when I was 20, bought my first house, working 2-3 jobs all the time. It was more of just making money. And it wasn't even necessarily making money to get rich. It was just what am I going to do with my downtime? Obviously that went landscaping and then hydro seeding, new lawns, stuff like that. For the first 4 years, worked a full-time job, a part-time job, and then did this stuff part-time, and then kind of phased into more of the design build because of my history with contractors, with contracting with my dad, and kind of took that leap of faith of seeing guys that were out there doing it that just weren't doing it the way I would do it. One big thing was I used to work for a guy, and he kind of operated a company that wasn't real employee driven. And I always thought it'd be so easy to have a company that cared about its people. And I know that sounds cliche, but the people have lives too. Your employees have lives just because they're employees. And so that was kind of my driving factor, I would say, is just to try to do it my way and do it different, wholeheartedly knowing I can fail. I can overextend and fail, and it doesn't take long because I watched my dad as a custom home builder go through 2008. And so, as a junior, senior in high school, when that happens, you remember that. I mean, it was a hard time for everybody.
Well, and that's the thing is you can fail from inside circumstances and outside, like
Right.
out of your control. There's like 2008, a lot of people went down that never would have foresaw that.
Right, and it teaches you a lot of lessons of like, okay, how do you prepare? How do you get through that? Like what do you set yourself up as a company? And, we've talked about it multiple times, kind of how I run the finances of this company. I don't run the finances of this company for me to live in a beach house while someone else is out doing everything, so that we're full risk all the time, and you have to take your risks. Don't get me wrong. But if you get into doing what we do and you're selfish, there's a very good chance you'll fail.
Well, and I feel like kind of going back to what you were talking about where it wasn't employee driven, and I don't know, like I don't feel like this is always 100% true, but if it's not employee driven, you're almost a little selfish in that aspect because, I mean, yes, you control the business, but your employees keep the business running, and that's true. And I feel like pretty much every type of business,
right? And I think so many business owners are ego driven, whereas the bottom line is there are business owners and there are employees, and that's how the world goes around. And there's nothing wrong with being either one. I think a lot of employees, one of the reasons I'm so transparent with our business with you is, I want you guys to know kind of what goes on, the internals of it. Like, you do a big expensive job. Well, you got big expensive bills that afforded you to do that job. And I think with my prior experience with a contractor working for them was, it was super cool that they had 5-6 4-wheelers and a camper at a campground, and they would take some of the employees to the campground every few weeks and go for a ride. But it's like, okay, but why not set it up to where that employee can have his own camper and his own 4-wheeler, and then he's at the campground that you're at, and it makes a better life, Dresden Landscaping, when I was young, Toby had told me something that really stuck with me, and it was he'd been in business long enough that he has employees that bought houses, had kids, big family, retired. And like they had worked for him pretty much that entire time, had a great retirement, had a great life, had a great everything went to their plan. And it's like that's the environment you want to create. The turnover nowadays with a lot of these smaller companies, and I'm not going to attribute it all to the business owner's fault, but I think your employees, number one, the one thing I always tell every single person that's ever worked for me is if you ever don't want to be here, tell me first and I'll help you find the thing you want to do. Like you don't have to tell me today and quit, and I'm not going to fire you today. Like if what you want to do is a 6-month plan, like let's get the plan rolling. I'll help you with the plan.
And that allows you more time to plan too.
Exactly.
It's a win-win.
Yeah. And so many guys, they get so caught up on the little stuff, and it's like the bottom line is if an employee doesn't want to be there, more money's not going to change his mind. More.
Well, it might one time.
Yeah.
It won't long term.
Right. And quite frankly, in my life, I've never really done anything money driven because to me, money's, obviously this is going to sound really, really simple, but it's simply an exchange. And once you start looking at it as more than that, if you start looking at money as money, it's a lifestyle, or money is going to be happiness. And don't get me wrong, more money can make you happier, but it comes with its own faults. It's not the do all end all. If you aren't happy in your relationship, if you aren't happy in your house, if you aren't happy with all those things, most of those problems, when you replace those things, are going to come with you because deep down, you're the problem.
Yeah.
Deep down, your driving factor is the problem.
Yeah.
And I think that in today's world, we're a material world.
Oh, so like social media shows that.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you? I mean, social media is a highlight reel, but what do you see? Everybody posting everything: their cars, their boats, or whatever. Like the cool things, the materialistic things that really. I mean, I've heard it from you. Like the best 2 days of a boat owner's life: the day he buys it and the day he sells it.
Yeah.
So like it makes you realize that material things don't give you happiness.
No. And time, you start realizing time is worth more than anything. And that's why, the way we operate with allowing guys freedom in their schedule, I got buddies and you know them also, like, yeah, you could make more money, but you're trading time. Mm-hmm. That's all a job is. You're trading time. And so if it's worth it for you, which when I was young and my kids were young, it was worth it. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was without a doubt. And like I've told you time and time again, when you're young, work. Save what you can.
It sounds very familiar to something my dad and Kurt and everybody else told me.
Yeah, and it's the biggest thing is, but there comes a point in life when you got to stop that, mm-hmm. and you got to realize there's more important things. Yeah. There's more important things. Your kids are going to grow up. Your fiance, your girlfriend, your wife is going to travel. Don't put off traveling. Don't put off stuff like that. And I encourage everybody, go see places. If you don't have kids and you are in your mid-20s and you are with us, your significant other, your wife wants to go. Mm-hmm. For the love of God, go. Because, coming from me, who had our first daughter when I was 24, at that time we couldn't afford to travel.
Yeah.
I see guys like yourself, you're getting into your mid-20s, later 20s, where financially it's not a burden on you to, if you were to go spend a Friday, Saturday, Sunday in Tennessee. But it's a memory. It's something that you and your wife or your fiance or your girlfriend or whoever, Jesus Christ, if you're single, go with your brother, you know. But go see those things, because you don't realize, we had a gap, my daughter's being in travel sports now. That's now our travel.
Yeah.
We never had a honeymoon. We never had any of that stuff because life slapped us in the face. So, I think it goes back to, how this all started was, this conversation is, what do you value most? Mm-hmm. And you really at times have to make that decision. Do you value time or do you value money? And I'm not going to say one's a right answer and one's a wrong answer.
Yeah, everybody's different. And that's the question I think a lot of people should ask themselves, like, what is most important to you in your life? And do you think that can change, or does it I think it changes slightly throughout life.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, obviously, like, once you have kids, once you get married, that kind of stuff, it does change your values a little bit. But, how does it change? Like, how has it changed for you, per se?
So, I mean, for me, the big thing was, and it's probably happened more lately when Bristol has gotten more into competitive sports, is, once they get to that competitive level, and everybody would say, I guess, don't miss your kids' T-ball games. Guess what? Watching T-ball is like watching paint dry. I'm sorry, but number one, your kid's not going to remember it. And this is going to sound terrible. I know there's going to be a lot of flack for this. Get to as many as you can. But once they get to 9, 10 years old is where it's sat in for me of, I have less time left with her before she's an adult than time I've already had. So, and then, our other one's coming up right behind her. So, she's 8 years from being an adult and starting to make her own decisions and move on. So, I guess for me, it's really changed last year when they are getting competitive. They are caring. It does mean something for them, for you to be there. You really want to have things taken care of by that time. Mm-hmm. And it's not always going to work out. We had this conversation earlier of, there are times when on a Saturday I have to miss a basketball game because I have a meeting. But this meeting is the reason that we have freedom later in the year, things like that. So, everybody wants to have a blueprint on what the answers are. Number one, we have 3 kids. They're all different. If I wrote a blueprint on our oldest one, it's different from our youngest one. The middle one, not even close. Everybody wants a kind of a blueprint on life and stuff like that. And I think, to me, learn to audible, learn to pivot. Like don't let your ego get in the way. What's the quote we both just read in Peterson?
It's not what you know or what you don't know that's the problem. It's about what you don't know that just ain't so.
Yeah. Or it's about what you know that just ain't so. So, essentially, when you get so convinced that you're right and then turn out wrong, that's when you get the real problems. And, so I guess I would say, don't convince yourself that your way is the perfect way. Don't convince yourself that, and I know this is a lot of cliche kind of sayings and stuff, but like you can't change yesterday.
Yeah.
You can change tomorrow. But if you continue making the same mistake, that's your own damn fault.
And I think too, another thing to realize too, there's a difference between like convincing and confidence. Like,
right.
Be confident in yourself, but also be willing to understand it may not work. And if it doesn't work, understand there's another way.
Right.
This isn't the end of the world. Like
failure's amazing. It
sucks, but it's amazing.
Yeah. And you I think I've probably, and this kind of goes back to your last question, is I've kind of learned more that failure has created, there's been multiple years where I'm going into spring, even prior to getting into these bigger projects, where, we've got $150,000 worth of mulch jobs sold, and that contract cancels 4 weeks before we're planning on starting because management changed or the company, the corporation got bought out or whatever. And, I remember those days vividly. And then, you go from thriving to surviving. Mm-hmm. And you can't just lay down. You can't just quit. You can't just call and complain because they don't care. And I think that's one of the big things that I've learned as I got older is you got to brush stuff off, and you hear it from the time you're a kid, but it doesn't really set in until, a lot of that stuff becomes more meaningful in life when you start making the bigger decisions and you start realizing like, I want it. You can't get emotional. I guess that would be my biggest thing. You can't get emotionally connected. We've had things happen this week at our office that it wasn't news that we wanted to hear.
Yeah.
But what do we say? You move on.
Is it going to change the fact that you still have that news?
Yeah.
If you get I get where the emotionally attached comes from, but there has to come a point like the old thing of like 5 minutes, be mad at it and then move on. It's something that I like. As I've gotten older in life, I realize why people say that because I used to be the way of like where something went wrong, like it may have been a couple days where it was dragging out. And it's the same thing in like relationships, business relationships, any of that kind of stuff. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. Like you wish for it to, but if it doesn't, you just gotta move past it.
Yeah, and it's tough, right? And it's really tough, especially when it's something. In today's world, I know there's a lot of people, in their mid-20s to 30s that are trying to buy a house. And, they get emotionally invested into purchasing a certain property. And then when that falls through, it's like, oh, well, we might as well not even try anymore. Mm-hmm. It's like, no, that's not the attitude. Take your licks and keep moving. It's back to sports. And this is why, obviously, me and you've talked about this a lot, too. Sports is a vital part of my kids' lives because sports teaches kids lessons. Mm-hmm. All these games that we've all played our whole life are games of failure.
Yeah.
They're games of failure. You can do every single thing right, and it doesn't go your way.
Why do you think it's such a big feat when a team goes undefeated and wins a championship or something? And like in baseball, that's not likely. In basketball, that's not likely.
Yeah.
Football, a little more likely, but still not likely.
Yeah.
Like there's a reason that it's a big deal when teams do that because you're used to having those setbacks, those failures, and they still had them, but they just maybe overcame them better than the other teams did. Right,
and your kids are ultimately that's our goal on this planet, right? Is give your kids a better life than what you had, and so I guess that would be where my life really changed was kids. You just realize there's a bigger meaning to everything. Mm-hmm. Now, everything I build, and things I do, my kids are still going to have to pave their own way.
Yeah.
Period. Whether my business fails, it won't be their responsibility, but if it succeeds, it's still not going to be, theirs to do with what they please.
Yeah.
So
kind of going off that, one of the questions I did have wrote down actually was, what was your biggest failure in business that actually ended up being like the best lesson?
Biggest failure.
And I know failure is like a big word. It may not even have been like a giant catastrophe, but just something maybe like the best lesson in general. Like
I would say I mean, there would be a couple of them. The most recent one that comes to mind is what we're currently going through with bringing in and delegating things. Is, you know, it's bringing to light our failures in the last few years from a tracking and organization and inventory, a profitability standpoint, and bringing in that office person and relying on them, you know, bringing in your guys that are existing and saying, hey, what do you enjoy doing that I don't?
Yeah, essentially.
And not even necessarily that I don't, but like if you enjoy doing something that I'm doing, okay, like I'll let you do that. I would say that was the hardest lesson to learn, was to start trusting other people. Now you got to be careful with who you trust with what, true. But you know, if I go back to when I was younger, I mean, probably my biggest failures were stuff like when that spring, when, you know, planned jobs fall through. Stuff like 3 years ago when, you know, you have customers that don't quite mesh with your company, and you walk away from them, you know, and you're talking some pretty large dollar figures that really are setbacks. But, you know, you have to sit down and think about what's better for yourself and what's better for your company. And I think that you can't be afraid to make the hard decisions. You know, the thing, and not to get off on another tangent, but the thing we talked about the other day, right? Is like, you can make the easy choices when you're young and make the hard choices later, or you can make the hard choices now and make the easy choices later.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I would say I have been fortunate that as much as I've overextended myself since I was 20, I've never really failed financially, because I never benefited financially from stuff, you know. So I never, and I think that's where a lot of guys fail, is that financial side.
It's not like you out there had a $400,000 house that you had a payment that was out the ass that you had to worry about.
Right. Like when my failures came through, we were still comfortable.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't even say comfortable. You know, we were able to get by.
Yeah.
But you know, it's that whole thing of living outside your means, and it's a world we live in. Mm-hmm. You know, and it's a world that's so easy to get caught up in. You know, but you know, I drive a truck that's 6 years old. Mm-hmm. You know, you drive. I drive
a newer truck than you.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't bought myself a brand new truck ever in my life, but I've bought, you know, about you. And I mean, when I get a build sheet on a truck, you know, I showed you the build sheet while we were going to Pennsylvania. You know, is this what you want? Is this something you'd like? You know, Jeff sends us pictures, and you know, Brent with his dump truck. I never drove it. I didn't drive it until a month ago, and we've had it for over a year. You know, so for me, it's never been about me. Mm-hmm. It just flat out hasn't. So, and I think if you can stay on that line, no matter what business you're starting, I think you can survive.
Yeah.
So,
kind of going off like the survival aspect, you know, the COVID year, a lot of people talk about that in business, and COVID year for you too was a little bit different, because that was kind of a transition period, because wasn't that when you kind of went from patios to patios and pools? So how was that navigating for you? And like, did you see a difference in this industry, or was it very similar to what you were kind of already doing?
So I would say my what do you want to call it? The legwork I did prior to ever taking the jump paid off, because, you know, during COVID, I mean, swimming pools was extreme. I mean, it was like you had to have your ducks in a row. And I mean, you know, things that you planned on doing weren't capable of being done because you couldn't get parts, you couldn't get pieces, you couldn't do this, you couldn't do that. But spending 2 years prior to ever doing our first job, researching and knowing and having contacts in the industry is what bailed me out. And essentially, like I've always told you, don't be afraid to be the dumb guy. Mm-hmm. And I was fortunate enough in those 2 years to surround myself with very smart guys that have been in the industry that I wanted to go into, and they were a phone call away.
What I really liked what our admin said the other day to that.
Yeah.
What did he say exactly?
So, I told him, because I told him, don't be afraid to call me out on my BS. Don't be afraid to say, Steve, you're doing this wrong, because I enjoy being the dumb guy. I enjoy being the guy that's in the room listening to all the guys who have it figured out, or the girls who have it figured out. And I've never let my ego get in the way of that. And, one thing he said was, but in reality, you're the smart guy for that. Because if it's a room full of smart guys that aren't learning off of each other, they shouldn't be in that room. When you really break it down, like you said, when you break it down to that, it had never crossed my mind that,
I know, it's so simple, but it's so good.
Yeah. And, everybody wants to learn. I feel like everybody thinks they want to learn to do stuff the right way, but they really don't.
They want to, I feel like, until they start doing it, and then they look for the corners to cut.
Yeah.
And, we're all guilty of doing it in different aspects of things. We've all done it. I get it. But it's one of those things that I've started looking at. Is it truly something you want to learn, or is it just something you want to do for fun?
Right.
Kind of thing. Like hobbies and that kind of stuff. If you really want to learn it, you can't cut corners.
And especially in today's world, right? If you want to learn to do something, like me personally, I don't want to learn how to do all the office stuff that Kelly's doing for us. I don't want to deal with that. If I had to, in the day of YouTube and
you want to learn how to play guitar,
podcasts, you can learn anything from anybody.
Yeah.
And so you really don't have that excuse anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's not hard to educate yourself.
You have an abundant access to information.
Yeah.
Infinite.
A computer in your pocket.
Yes.
We talk about it all the time relating to sports, the stuff that's available to my daughter that I would have dreamt of having, and I'm not that old.
Yeah.
I was in high school, 15 years ago. You didn't have trainers. You didn't have lessons. If you were a pitcher, chances are you threw hard.
Yeah.
If you were a catcher, chances are you taught yourself. If you were a lineman, you were just a big, strong dude. There wasn't somebody that was molding you to that. If you were a wide receiver, chances are you were just fast.
Yeah.
Whereas nowadays you can be whatever you want to be.
Yeah.
Let's face it. I mean, you got Jose Altuve, which I hate Houston anyways, but you got to give it to the guy. He's freaking 5 foot, not shit, and he got there. He made it happen. Yeah. So, the availability for you to succeed in today's world is if you're tough, flat out bottom line, and for lack of a better term, if you're not a pussy in today's world, you can make it.
Yeah.
Period.
That's what I was going to ask is what is the best quality to have as a business owner, in your opinion?
You got to be willing to listen. You got to be willing to learn. I guess I would say, because even some of the information you get is wrong.
Yeah.
So you can't just believe everything you say. So, I've been fortunate with the guys that I've met through social media, between Indiana and Ohio, and even down south and out west, some guys that there's just so many avenues. I think you got to be open-minded. I think you got to be willing to be doing it wrong and fix it. You can't be willing to do it wrong, find out you're doing it wrong, and then continue doing it wrong.
Yeah.
And that's a big problem with companies that we come in behind or that we see doing work is they know they're doing it wrong. They know that the job's going to fail. They're still going to keep pushing on. Or they're going to knock a couple grand off the price and say, whatever,
That's what Reno, the other guy part of the podcast, he moved up in his companies to a manager role. And he goes, one of the things that's driving me nuts right now is people are like there's this thing going on, but nobody fixes it and nobody has a solution. They're like, that's just the way it is. And it's no, that's not how we have to operate. It's wrong. Let's figure out a new solution. Give me any idea. I don't care what it is. Let's just keep trying to fix this instead of just running on the bad side of it.
Yeah. And I was, me and my wife were at Costco. Where did we go? Sunday. Manager's walking down the aisle. As he's walking towards me, he bends over and picks up a little piece of paper that was probably 1 inch by 1 inch. But he picked up the trash while he was walking past it. Anybody who says, I want to move up in my company, if you're not willing to do that, whether you're the CEO or the janitor, you're not going to get there.
Yeah.
whatever. I mean, there's plenty of times where I'm the guy, for the most part, every single concrete job we did, I was shoveling concrete. I'm in the hoe, I'm swinging it over there, I'm jumping out, grabbing a shovel, even if it's just for 4 shovelfuls. Quite frankly, it's a waste of time for me to do that. But if it's available, and that's one thing I learned from the guys in Michigan, is to run as efficient as we run, you have to be willing to do everything.
Yeah.
You can't pick and choose. And at Reno's company, that's the same thing that frustrates him is you have this generation of people who look at things as not my job. Mm-hmm. Bullshit.
Yeah.
Bullshit, not your job. You're not too good to clean the bathrooms. You're not too good to restock the paper towels. You're not too good to vacuum the floor of your truck. I don't care what it is. People notice.
Yeah.
Just like the other night, I take the 450 home. My daughter gets in it. Shocked it's clean. How many people, when we take that truck places, say, "Oh, you got a new truck?" No.
Anytime I clean it, which it's never usually that dirty. Like there's times we just don't have the time to clean it. But like when you clean it, everybody's like, "Oh, you got a new truck," and it's like, yeah, it looks brand new because it's not beat to crap and back. Because one of the things you've always said that you hate is it's a work truck. And that's something that's stuck in my head.
But it doesn't have to look like a work truck.
It doesn't have to look like it. That doesn't mean you just go throwing things in it and beating it. And
like you might treat your own cars?
Well, that's different, all right?
Yeah.
I think that's not a bad quality to have. Treat other people's stuff with more respect than your own.
See, and so I'm gonna make you feel like shit right now. But to me, if you don't take care of your own stuff, you're disrespecting yourself.
Well,
and I've always said, don't talk bad about yourself.
Yeah.
Don't, it's like the can't. Very rarely do you hear any of us really say I can't.
Yeah.
We're kind of a let's go mentality. And back on the kids thing, right? You don't want your kid to say I can't. Mm-hmm. You want your kid to be like, let's go. And it's one of those that you just teach that habit, and the habit eventually becomes super easy. It's something you don't even think about. But to me, if you just say, you know what, every single vehicle I'm going to treat like a brand new vehicle. Every single vehicle I'm going to treat the same. Every person I have a relationship is going to get the same level of respect, which can be a fault at times, especially with myself. My wife tells me all the time, she thinks that I should treat her different because she's my wife. And I'm like, if anything, I should be more demanding of you because you're my wife. And I don't mean demanding as in doing tasks. Yeah. I mean, expect more out of you as a human because you're around me. Mm-hmm. And I want you to grow, and I want you to get better, and I want you to have goals, and I want you to have something you're driving for. And I think that, you can never not have goals. You can never not have a next step. Probably one of my biggest successes in this business, and you know this, we master one thing, and before you know it, I'm standing there going, all right, so what do you guys think about this? And
I'm wondering when we're getting out of pools and trying something new.
Yeah. We're talking about starting to, look at doing some turf athletic fields and stuff like that. Because we actually just talked about the competitive nature of men the other day. But
it's actually kind of cool that you, like, the way you talk about it, it makes us excited about it.
Yeah.
Like, because it's like, why not try it? Like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen?
Right.
We do one job and we're like, screw that. That's not for us.
And we have. I mean, there's things that we've been like, nah, we're going to find an easier way for that. Yeah. And I think that would be my biggest thing. That I think number one, the number one thing. I mean, I've got endless. My brain is
an encyclopedia.
Yeah, it's out of control.
That doesn't stop flipping.
There's so many lessons that I could forward on to people that, or that if I could go back, to a younger age. Now, I don't think I would have listened to me. I think I would have probably taken the same exact avenue that I took.
Which is that a bad thing?
No, and that's a huge thing, right? Is everybody wants to regret things. I wouldn't, there's some decisions that I look back on and wish I would have done differently, but I wouldn't have the wife I have. Without the wife I have, there's some bad habits that I had when I was in my early 20s that would still be living with me. I'm not a big regret guy. I'm a real big grow from your mistakes guy.
It's the same with me in college.
Yeah.
I mean, I regret it? No, not really, because I may not even be in this job today.
Right.
I know I more than likely would not have this podcast.
Yeah.
Like there's so many different, it's like every decision you make shapes you good and bad.
Yep.
Like, there's good things that come out of it. There's bad things that come out of it. But the bad things only stick around if you allow them to.
Yes. And you can't forget them, you know, and it's like I tell people when someone dies or someone passes away, you know, everybody wants to rush to say it'll be okay. But I've always, my entire life, I've always been the guy, even when I was a kid, it's not going to be okay. You know, it drives me nuts when someone tells someone it'll be okay, because it's not going to be okay. But you're going to learn to live with it. Mm-hmm. And it's just like your mistakes. It's not okay that you did that. But you can grow from it. You can live with it. And you can manage it. And we all have, let's face it, we all have demons and things and decisions that we aren't proud of. But if you forget those, it's just like, you know, the school's trying to rewrite history right now and not teach the true history of America, as bloody and battered and not impressive as some of our decisions were. When you erase history, it repeats itself.
Yeah, history will repeat itself if you allow it to.
Yeah, and that's, you know, that's a huge thing. And, you know, that's why like we talked about the other day, I'm a huge guy of not reading fiction books. Like I'm a huge, me and you talk about Jordan Peterson all the time. We talk about, you know, and I know everybody has their own opinions, Goggins and Jocko and those. And, you know, in today's world, those are looked at as, you know, the masculinity thing. Well, you know what? You know what's going to make the country survive? Masculinity. Women have their part, which, by the way, you create all humans. So we're not calling you out. Like we're not disrespecting you. But you know, we're in such a wacky world when it comes to all of this stuff. And I think that if you read books like that and you try to stick some of the quotes and some of the stuff in the filing cabinet in your brain, I think it really makes you a different person. It just slowly molds you. And you know, we could talk for days about what books, you know, me and you have read and kind of what we're looking at, even though we're really bad about staying on track with them.
We go through spells.
Yeah. And so, you know, we could talk about that forever, but that's not really what this podcast is for. I mean, I'm sure we'll probably end up doing this again, and we can go down those other avenues, a little more specific maybe for a whole episode.
Is there, like, if there was one book as a business owner that you would recommend, what would that be?
I mean, there's a few. I mean, I'm not a big business book specific guy. I'm a huge Goggins, you know, his first book. Haven't read his second one yet. I'm a huge fan of that, just because to me, business is life. Yeah. And when you see what he's come through and what he's dealt with, it's like, you know, quit being a pussy. Yeah. All right. Like, you know, yeah, you've had some hurdles to come over. Yeah. You know, you grew up poor. Nobody gives a fuck. No. Move on. And so I would say, I think I recommend the Goggins book to anybody who isn't a kid. Yeah. I mean,
if you're a kid, don't read that one.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, there's from a financial perspective, there's a great book, you know, Profit First is a really good book if you're operating a company. You know, you got to make money. Yeah. You know, if you're going to be an entrepreneur and deal with all the entrepreneur BS, you got to make money. So that's a good one to read into. But, you know, obviously the Peterson book, I think if you have the mental capacity, which I've proven to myself a few times now that, like, I kind of wander off. I think if you could sit down and crank that out, I think that's a huge. But I just think if you read those books that from these superior humans, they kind of put it in layman's terms for you. You know, now Peterson, not quite layman's terms.
No,
but
I wish.
But you can relate.
Yes.
So yeah, I would say, you know, I think everybody should read Goggins' book. I think Goggins' book should be something that every single 16, 17, 18-year-old should read.
I almost think like a freshman in college should have to read it.
Yeah.
Because like if I'd have read that book freshman year of college, it would have changed my outlook on the rest of my college career, the rest of my life.
Yeah.
I mean, it did.
And you were a pretty disciplined athlete,
Yeah.
even at that point, and it still would have changed your perspective.
Yeah, it would have made me a lot more driven,
Yeah.
I feel like. And it's not even like driven, like weight room type driven. It's just life. Like,
Yeah.
be better in your life at whatever aspect it is. And, you know, because a lot of people, too, kind of going off of it, like, would go with the try hard thing. And,
Yeah.
like, I get the try hard thing, and I don't like it at the same time because, like, Goggins, you can call him a try hard.
Yeah.
Like Rogan talked about the first time he ever came on the podcast, he's like, I got there. He was 2 hours early. He was in my gym doing pull-ups. And it's like, oh, like, screw this guy. And it's like, how can you be mad at a try hard for giving everything he does 100%?
Right. And I think we just, as humans, as men with egos, we all have them. There's things that, you know, I think guys like Goggins, guys like Haynes, like people get turned off because, I mean, they're alpha. I mean, they are freaking, like, you know, let's go. They're what every man wishes they will be when they're 60 years old.
Yeah.
No doubt. You know, and I think that's what you can grow from. I mean, and if you're a 40-year-old man that wants to make some changes in your life, read that.
Yeah.
Do something hard. You know, do something hard. And I talk about it with my wife all the time. You know, my wife's she's way smarter than me. Book smart. Let's just clear that up. I mean, you know, she's you know, like Dean's List, National Honor Society, through nursing school, like all that was great. You know, if I'm having a heart attack, like she is the chick I want by my side. If we're deciding a paint color for a room, nah. Not her thing.
What do you mean? You took forever to figure out the paint color for this room.
Right, yeah. And she would have been worse. But
Yeah, I know.
but for you know, I think we all have our place, you know, as humans, and I think, you know your place. Know your place, and if you don't like your place, change it.
That's the thing. Going back to the abundance of information, it's so easy to change where you're at.
Right.
Whether it's at your job, like, and that's the thing. People are like, oh, I don't have the qualifications for that. Everything's online nowadays.
Yeah.
Pretty much, like, everything is online.
Yep.
Available classes to go get certifications and that kind of stuff. Now, like, nursing and that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
that's different. But, like, you can set yourself up easily for any of it.
And you know, I just, you know, with kids and with the college thing, like there's a lot in today's world. There's many avenues, and to be honest, I don't care if you're 18, I don't care if you're 30, I don't care if you're 50. If you're not happy doing what you're doing every day, change it. Because in today's world, you can. We have an ability that our parents didn't have. Mm-hmm. Our parents, you know, you got a job. It was a good job. You rode that job out till you retired, and then you typically retired unhappy and die a few years later. We don't have that problem.
Yeah.
We don't. Quite frankly, if you're working for a guy or a corporation and you don't like what you're doing, I think a lot of people would be surprised if you go sit down with that CEO or that VP or the president of that company and said, you know, I really like what we do. I just don't like what I do. What can I do to get to that next step? Yeah. If they look at you and say, you're stuck. You know, that's what you're going to do. You're never going to pass up Ben. You're never going to pass up someone. Okay, now what do? You put a plan together to find another company. Mm-hmm. And you don't make rash decisions, you know, but you have to have a plan. You have to be ready to go.
Kind of, too, I wanted to talk because everybody thinks, it was one thing I learned in college, but everybody thinks that entrepreneurship and owning your own business is this awesome thing. You get to set your own schedule. You get to do what you want. A lot of people don't realize how much of a hassle it is at the same time. Like a hassle in a good and bad way, but kind of talk about that of like the things that people forget or don't realize, like, hey, you're now in charge of everything, not just this one thing.
Right. And I think my biggest thing would be, you know, obviously it depends on what kind of business you go into, but, you know, everybody always kind of asks like, hey, you know, what are you guys doing for the 4th of July? What are you guys doing for Memorial Day? What are you guys doing for Labor Day? And my response to them is probably working on somebody's pool, because my clients expect to use their pool for the holidays.
Yeah.
I really can't go out of town on holidays now. Christmas, stuff like that. Yeah, no big deal. I mean, me and you have been out at how many spas when it's -10, -15 because a pump is acting up. You have to be there for them. And to be honest, that's not your responsibility. That's not Brent's responsibility. I'm the one who fields that call, and I'm the one who has to drop everything I'm doing and go do it. And I think that people do think you set your own schedule, which, I mean, you kind of do, but your schedule's from 6 in the morning till 10 at night. You're still going to get those calls on Saturday, on Sunday, things like that. And obviously there's times where, I'm out of town for a softball tournament or whatever, and, I'll text you and you get it taken care of. But, it takes a special person to actually start, operate, run a successful business. I mean, it just, and to be honest with you, looking back, I probably could have went and worked for a company and bought it out eventually and had a much easier life. And I think everyone thinks starting a business is the easiest way to go. And it's just, I wouldn't tell people not to do it. Mm-hmm. Now, in today's world, as expensive as things are in my industry, I would say start some affiliate marketing bullshit from your computer. Like get into landscape design and 3D design and stuff like that. Like don't carry, $1 million in equipment overhead in today's world, because every single piece of equipment we bought pre-COVID. Yeah. If we've got $1 million on the sheet of equipment, to purchase all that today, you're probably 1.7, 1.8, So you really have to keep your shit in order. Mm-hmm. It's just not the freedom that you anticipate it being. I think, and if you go into it knowing like, I really don't know what I'm getting into, I kind of know this is going to suck and be hard, that'll be all right. Yeah. But if you're not willing to do little things like make your bed or clean up the house maybe when your wife's sick or things like that, you're probably not willing to do the small things in a business either. And I think you should understand, I think everyone needs to understand, there's nothing wrong with working for somebody. If you find the right fit, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, the Tussey guys, right? Yeah. If I lived back there, I would work for them. Yeah. Like, hands down. If for some reason I had to relocate there, I would go work for Matt and them. Wouldn't think twice about it. Jeremy, I could work for him. Yeah. Andy. Like there are a lot of, and I think it's probably more prevalent nowadays that there's a lot of really good business owners out there than there was 15 years ago. Yeah. Because there's a lot of guys like myself that worked for companies that didn't quite do it up to what we thought we could, and so now we incorporate that. I mean, people think I'm nuts with the days that we take off, as a company, or the days where we're like, what, screw it, it's awful nice today, like.
Or they think you're nuts for being equipment heavy.
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, all of them we talk to, and it's like that little group of guys between me and Turnell and Jeremy and Andy, like we don't rely on people much. No. We rely on equipment.
And make sure employees happier.
Exactly.
I can promise you that.
I mean, the information we found out the other day, we were like, screw it, we'll find another piece of equipment. So but yeah, I mean, I would say if you want to do it, I encourage everybody. Yeah. I encourage everybody. Find a business that you enjoy, minimum overhead, no matter what, it's going to suck. No, it may be a 1-year suck. It may be 10 years of sucking. Like you don't know, but don't quit your job. Like don't quit that, to just chase your dream. Yeah. We all had dreams.
Amazon lost money for like the first 10 years.
Right.
Or something like that. And like, now look at them. Yeah. It's one of the most successful businesses.
I think, what was it? Elon Musk was trying to sell Tesla to, the Apple guy back in the day for $20 million or something, and like he laughed at him, and it's like, what the hell? And so you just can't give up. Now, once you get to that level of stuff, like
it's different.
I mean, if I could pay senators off for certain things, like I probably would. But if you're starting a small company, write down your goals, write down your accomplishments. What's your plan? Do you want to start a company to better your life or to do it better than somebody else? Or do you want to start a company to be a rich guy?
Yeah.
If you want to start a company to be a rich guy, dude, just stay working your job, invest everything in mutual funds or I mean, shit, buy Bitcoin 10 years ago. Like that's a better bet than a small business.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Yeah. Especially in the uncertainty of the world.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, and I'm sure it's always kind of been that way. Because, I mean, it 100% has, because we never know what's going to happen next year.
No.
Nobody saw COVID coming. Nobody saw 9/11
Well,
coming.
I mean, I think some people did. But we won't go down that rabbit hole.
Well, there is also that.
Yeah.
But, like, not everybody can foresee these crazy things that happen that could shake up the economy, good or bad.
Yeah, and so what do? You prepare for it. You know, if it's, I grew up after the collapse in 2008. I grew up with a father and a stepmom that kept 12 to 18 months of bills in the bank, or kept that as investments or kept it somewhere. So worst case scenario, I mean, you're not going to go a year without making money.
It's my grandfather, when he passed, like when my grandma and everything passed away and they were cleaning out the house, they said they found cash like stashed everywhere. It's because he went through the time where you didn't trust the banks.
That's right.
And it carries over.
Which, by the way, you shouldn't nowadays either.
Yeah, it's hard to trust a lot of
Yeah.
anything government related.
Yeah, I mean, it's a real easy motto. Like I said, if the government recommends it, don't do it. Like that's now, other than taxes, I mean, you're kind of screwed there.
You don't have a choice.
But yeah, I mean, and I think, I guess if you want to start a business, find a mentor. Like, find somebody to bounce ideas off of them. And if you're serious and you go to a guy that you have respect for and he looks at you and goes, don't do it, you have two options. He doesn't want you as a competitor, or or it's a real stupid idea. Yeah. Like you have to keep that in mind. If you want to become the biggest mowing company in Franklin County, and you go to a guy that's the second biggest mowing company in Franklin County, he's not going to want you to do it.
Yeah.
Go talk to people in the industry. I went out of state when it came to what I did. I talked to guys from Illinois. I talked to guys from Michigan. I talked to guys from Indiana. But don't go at it alone. I mean, just I'm sure you with the podcast, like there's been guys that you've reached out to and got info off of. And I'm sure there's guys you've reached out to that you just get nothing.
Oh, especially with guests, like talking to people. But that's what's the worst thing that's going to happen?
Yeah.
They don't respond, or they tell you no.
Yep.
That's it.
Yeah. And so I think if you're going to go the route of wanting to start a company, be the dumb guy and find a guy that wants to help out the dumb guy. Find a guy out of your market, essentially. That would be the big thing.
So here's the kicker question I got for you. I told you I had one for you that was a little bit different because you coach softball as well.
Yeah.
Has coaching influenced business, or business influenced coaching, or both, or neither?
I think. There's a lot of thoughts on that. Also, I think being a coach, it's really hard to be a business owner and coach 9 and 10-year-old girls. I will tell you that. Because if you're at
the NFL level,
right,
it's a
right,
business,
right,
so.
Right. Now, like because of the competitive nature of myself, but it is really cool to watch kids who have no faith in themselves figure shit out. Like, there's nothing more rewarding. And obviously, having daughters, I chose to coach little girls until I can stop. It's not. This is not a lifelong task. It's cool to watch them try something, fail, try it, fail, and then they succeed. And I think so with relating coaching to the business. I kind of try to teach my girls on our team the same way that I run my business. Is like, you're gonna fail. You're gonna suck at this at first, and I'm very transparent about that. I'm very transparent about when I'm making adjustments to a girl of how to do something that this is not going to go your way. Mm-hmm. And so I try to correlate kind of my life with coaching because I said it for years now, if you can raise a tough kid today, they're going to dominate the world in 10 years because everybody's raising limps.
Nothing's going to phase them.
Yeah, everybody's raising babies. Bristol brought a home or walked to the sidelines with a second place medal on Sunday and took it off her neck and said, we're just the first losers. And it's like, yeah, well, maybe I should chill a little bit on that. But if she uses it to drive herself, cool. If she's saying it just to be an ass, you got to talk to your kids about that. But I think that from operating a business perspective, these kids look up to you. They respect you for the most part. Our team is based on all the parents know if they're 10 years old, but if they're getting bad grades, we want to know about it. If they're back talking to you at home, we want to know about it. I don't care if you're the best 10-year-old pitcher in the state. If you're disrespectful and stuff like that, in life, that's gonna hit you hard, and on my softball team that's going to hit you hard. And so I try to probably correlate more. I've probably changed my style of coaching or helping a kid more to the business way than coaching has eased, chilled me out.
Yeah.
I don't think I can chill out. I don't think I can settle down.
That's it's funny because I was listening to Jocko and Peterson. They just released a podcast together, and that was one of the things Peterson said. He went and visited his parents, and his mom was like, don't you ever relax or take a break or whatever? And he's like, I don't know if I really know how.
Yeah.
That's not in my mind right now. Right now it's still get after it.
Yeah.
And I don't think he's like, one day, yeah, I'll be able to sit on the beach in Florida and relax and just enjoy my life. But time's not now.
Right. And I think that's one of the things with, what I would say too, just kind of as an out there thought is, when I started my business, I had goals of, I want to make this much money, right? No budget, no nothing. Fuck it, I'll throw this number out there. This is what I want to make. This is what I want to do. And then next year I want to double it. And then the year after I want to double it. And then I want to double that. And you go through that, probably a little more. I wasn't driven because I had any ideas that I wanted to do with the money. It was just, let's just keep it growing. And I think you can't get caught up in that, because here's the deal. If your goal is to always have $1 million, once you get there, you're going to want 2. Mm-hmm. Once you have 2, you're going to want 4. Yeah. And so you have to really keep things in perspective. You have to really keep things kind of mellowed out and keep them goal oriented and keep them driven to that point. And I think it's hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard. It's even harder if you overextend yourself and you do live in that 5-bed, 2-bath, 3-bath house in the big fancy neighborhood. It's even worse because then as you're getting more, you're spending more. And then it really never ends. So
yeah, one thing I saw on TikTok or Instagram, and it said my problem is that I look at 40-year-olds and want to have what they have while I'm at 22 or something.
Yeah,
and it's keeping up with the Joneses, but it's because those are also the people that I like to be around because more than likely they're hanging out with older guys, not being the smartest guy in the room.
Yep.
So it's a double-edged sword, but you also have to take a step back and realize I'm not at that point in my life yet. Hopefully I get there before them.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be instantaneous.
Right. Well, what is it? Elon Musk said something along the lines, and this isn't his exact quote, but write down your goals for the next 5 years or 10 years, and then try to accomplish them in a year. Mm. You may not do it, but you're a hell of a lot closer than if you were looking 10 years out. Yeah. And I think that's the key to it is, challenge yourself. Make it tough. Make sacrifices.
Yeah.
Don't sacrifice family time, too much, but make sacrifices because here's the deal. Tomorrow's never promised.
Yeah.
So if you want to do something, fucking go do it.
Yeah.
If you want to take that extra week of unpaid vacation, do it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's weird too because I saw a thing on Instagram too that was successful people lived an unbalanced life at one point.
Oh yeah.
That's where I think a lot of people try. I understand the balance aspect, but It's an unbalanced balance is what it really needs to be. It's not going to be 50-50. All right. Like if you see a lot of successful business owners, like really like the, $1 million, like multi-million dollars, a lot of them end up divorced after time.
Oh yeah.
It's because they're looking at, they spend so much time on the business, and but I'm not saying maybe they did, maybe they didn't, but whether they spent as much family time, they don't spend as much family time when you're growing a multi-million-dollar business.
Yeah. And the reality of it is you're going to have to sacrifice. Like if you want that, so you can either sacrifice, and that goes back to at the beginning what I said, like sacrifice when your kids are young. I don't want to be a prick, but I mean, your kids aren't going to remember anything until they're 6, 7 years old. My kids, as much as I missed, number one, I never felt bad if I missed because I was stuck on a job or if I had something. But I realized they don't remember it. They don't remember whether I was there or not. And as the dad who pushes them harder, sometimes they don't want you there.
Yeah,
and that's okay. Like but if you're going to miss time, miss it then.
Yeah, you don't want to miss their graduation.
Right. They remember that.
Yeah, that's something that'll stick with them probably for the rest of their life.
And if you have to miss something like I do, and you worked late and it's 8:30 at night when you get home and you've worked outside all day when it's 95 degrees and you're sweaty and you're nasty and you're gross and you missed 2 softball games and it sucks, but throw them in the truck, go get some ice cream.
Yeah.
Because they'll remember that.
No, Dad was gone all day, but he came home and still paid attention.
Exactly.
Like, we didn't not exist to him.
Put your phones down. Pay attention. If your kid asks you to tuck them in, tuck your kid in. Mm-hmm. I don't care if you're asleep in bed. Go tuck them in. Like, that's one of the big things. And it kind of settled in with Briella. I spend a lot of time with my older one, obviously, because I coach her team. And she asked, Dad, when I'm that old, are you going to coach me? As a human, isn't it right for me to do that, to treat my kids evenly?
Yeah.
She doesn't know, she doesn't, it matters to her. She showed me it matters. So, that's a decision we'll have to make when we get to that point. But I would say 7, 8 years old, they start remembering, they start calling you on your bullshit.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had multiple discussions with my older one of, why are you always on the computer? Well, that's my job. Now that we have an office and stuff, obviously I leave my stuff here for the most part until they go to sleep and I separate that out. But it is a balance and it's a delicate balance.
Yeah.
I would rather sacrifice my own sleep than have to hear from my kids because there's nothing worse than when somebody says that to you.
Yeah.
It's not fun. So,
but we'll go into the final question I got for you.
Yeah.
If you could go back, I ask all my guests this, and I'm excited to hear your answer. But if you could go back in time and tell your 16-year-old self one thing, what would it be?
I mean, this is gonna contradict something I said earlier because I learned a lot of valuable lessons for it. I would honestly, my number one thing I would tell my 16-year-old self would be don't drink.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a lot going for me, and I never got in any trouble with drinking. But I had a lot going for me that I decided, having a good time or what I thought was a good time at the time was more beneficial. And, that was a stage that I was in for quite some time. And I would say not drinking would be the most pivotal. That would be the one thing that would change the outcome of my teens to my 20s more than anything. Because like I said, I had a great baseball career, and not that I kind of pissed it away. It was just that like I loved it, but at that time, you didn't have the trainers, you didn't have this stuff, you didn't have these people telling you, this is the blueprint for going to the next level. This is this. But it would have prevented a lot of stress and bull crap between my 16 to 22, 24-year-old years, and really changed my direction. You know, at that point, you know, I think I always kind of wanted to have my own business. So I think that mentality was always the same. But I look at where I'm at now and I go, if I would have taken those 4 to 8 years and been driven on my goals versus stuff that really doesn't benefit you in life. Because, you know, one funny thing, and you've probably, I don't think you've had it happen to you as much as I did, but when you quit drinking, you all of a sudden lose a lot of friends.
Yep.
You know, and it's not a bad thing, but you realize, holy shit, I was surrounded by people
that just wanted to drink.
That just wanted to drink, and you know, and then you start going down the avenue of the health reasons, and then what it really does to you, and then you have kids, and you go, okay, what do I want to be for them, and what is their view on it? So I would say my number one thing, and it's like I tell people all the time, I said, you know, if you've got a kid in Central Ohio right now that doesn't know what they want to do with their life, they need to go to a trade school, they need to stay away from drugs, they need to stay away from alcohol, and they need to stay away from women. And no offense to women, but if that boy can do that from the time he's 18 till he's 30, there's a decent chance that with his investments and his retirement, if he's in one of them unions, by the time he's 45, 50, he's retired, everything's paid off. He can now enjoy that later life instead of retiring and dying. Yeah. So I think, you know, alcohol is one of those, it's one of those sore subjects, obviously, because there's some people who are phenomenal at drinking.
AKA my parents. Yeah. We talked about it on the podcast.
And you know, but your parents are probably some of the only people I've ever met in my life.
Yeah.
That can do it the way they do it.
Yeah.
I mean, so I think that, you know, not to just drag it out, but, but if you would have told me at 16 not to drink because I
was told
I was 10 foot. Yeah, I was 10 foot tall and bulletproof. I mean, I grew up with a dad who doesn't drink. You know, so, you know, I lived at a house that had no alcohol ever, no wine coolers, no. I mean, fuck, we didn't have gay seltzers back then, but you know, I mean, we didn't have any of that stuff. And which, by the way, I mean, you know.
Seltzers ain't that bad.
They're not that bad.
I don't like White Claws, but
they're they're good beach drinks.
Yes.
But and you know, to this day, I just still don't really drink. Mm-mm. And as fun as it is at times when you decide to, I think it's one of those that once you've quit for long enough, you realize you're not missing out on anything.
Once you slow down on drinking or quit drinking, I feel like you realize drinking's fun in the moment.
Yeah.
Not long term.
No, and to be honest, probably the biggest reason I still don't drink is I hate feeling like shit.
Exactly, like, that's kind of where I'm going with it.
Like, quite frankly, if I'm gonna dunk my ass in 32-degree water to better myself, I'm not gonna drink a beer. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Like if you're gonna torture yourself and there's tons of guys out there, right? They work out just so they can still party, and you know. But if I'm gonna do that, I don't know. I feel like there's a common denominator with failures, and I think alcohol is a very common denominator. And I think alcohol takes control of very good people. Mm-hmm. And again, there are your outliers, but they are very few and far between.
Yeah, I agree. Well, and like something I noticed when I slowed down on the drinking aspect was the productivity.
Yeah,
it increases. Like, because I mean, I used to be guilty of it. Oh, I'm more productive when I drink.
Yeah.
I used to say that, and it was just really an excuse.
Yeah.
But then when you realize, like, when you actually just, you know, I remember taking, like, just a few weeks at least and, like, no drinking.
Yeah.
And then, like, I'd be down in the basement. I'm like, I'm getting so much more done.
Yeah.
I'm not getting distracted by Instagram and all that kind of stuff. So, well, yeah.
And you know, I can still to this day remember the first Saturday morning that I woke up sober. Like, I can remember, like, rolling out of bed at, like, 5:30 and being like, I got the whole fucking day.
And you feel good.
Yeah. Like, I don't need to roll into Chipotle at 11:30 and just to recover. Like, yeah. And that really stuck is you know, so I think that would be my biggest lesson. And you know, I say the stay away from women thing. I mean, there's good ones out there, but you know, if you're a single dude nowadays, just be careful. Jesus Christ. I mean, I talk to some of these girls and I'm like, oh my God, you're so dumb. Like, and that's not all girls, trust me, the younger guys are dumb too. But
Oh yeah.
but yeah, if you can just stay driven. I mean, I see guys when Bristol goes to Shelby, you know, taking her pitching lessons, and these dudes are walking in as juniors and seniors, and their quads are chiseled, and they're pitching, and they come in and they do this whole routine, and they're so disciplined. But you know, like that kid, I can look at his discipline. I don't know his name, I don't know what school he goes to, and I can go, he'll be successful even when his baseball career fails,
Yes.
or if it fails. And you know, we really didn't have that. I know you were pretty athletically disciplined. You know, you said you loved lifting. I never lifted. You know, I was blessed to be able to throw a baseball hard, and that was pretty much what drove me through everything. But you know, I can promise you that the kid that I'm talking about doesn't drink.
Yeah.
At all. You know?
When I was going through training and before my senior year, that was one of the things they told me, you know, I don't know if you do, but stay out of parties this year, stay out of drinking, stay out of drugs, just stay away from all of it. It'll be better in the long run.
Yeah.
I wish I would have listened to it
Oh,
more,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
you live and you learn.
Yeah, and that's I guess, you know, to me, if I told 10,000 kids just don't drink, and 2 of them went that route, it's worth it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I had a lot of fun. But we'll just leave it at that. But you know, and in today's world, it's riskier.
Yeah.
It's way riskier, man. Like, you know, back when I was partying hard, you got in fist fights.
Yeah.
Nowadays, you get stabbed or you get shot
Or a police report.
which affects you, whether, you know, that might affect your college scholarship, that might affect a lot of stuff for the rest of your life. So, you know, I was able to get away with it. You were probably on the tail end of able to get away with it.
It was a combination.
Yeah, but you know, and the worst part is, you know, I'd say 9 out of 10 kids are still gonna do it. You know, The only difference in me and you and some of these kids now that are struggling to get jobs is we didn't get caught.
Yeah.
That's the separating factor, and that's a scary freaking factor when you get kids. Trust me. I mean, I'm looking at my wife going, "We got 3 kids. You know what the chances of at least one of them turning out to be a dumbass is?" Like, love my kids, very smart, but
I learned through all my siblings how to not get caught.
exactly. Yeah, you were fortunate. You had some mature siblings that kind of kept you on the straight and narrow. So,
Yeah. But Steve, I appreciate you coming
Yep.
on. It's been 3 years in the making. but
yeah.
Maybe one day you'll hear your own podcast. We'll see.
Nope, we don't listen to them. We don't listen to them. I don't want to hear myself talking.
But that's all we got for today's episode. Until Friday, you guys know the deal. Life is hard and it's going to knock you down just like a bull does to a bull rider. Don't let the bull of life walk all over you. Get up, grab the bull by the horns, and take control of your life. Roughnecks, out.